ExtraOrdinary, the Power Series Book 3. Written by Starr Z. Davies. Narrated by Jillian R. Shelton. 8. The same nightmare plagues my sleep every night. I'm strapped to a table, screaming, bleeding. Metal cuts my flesh as I bend and break it free. Each time I startle awake as a gunshot echoes off the power-reinforced walls. Sweat soaks the sheets, and I have to shower to wash it off my skin. After washing up, Polly initiates the same conversation with me, though each time the words are different. How did I sleep? She slept amazing. How am I feeling? I look a little pale. She can't wait for training for some reason or another. More about the boy. Honestly, the girl rambles so much I have a tough time caring about what she says. But she's friendly with me, something that no one else has bothered attempting. One morning, I ask her about her name. We all have call sign names connected to our powers, but Polly is pretty ordinary. She chews her lip, glances toward the door, then shrugs. What can I say? And that's where she leaves it. No explanation. Nothing. She leaves for the day as if that answered my question. It didn't. During training each day, Nevermore focuses on teamwork, abandoning the brutal lessons he forced me through in those first days with no mention of them. If it wasn't for the disapproving glares or the snide pointers thrown in my direction, I would have believed he forgot about the initial lessons altogether. But the bitterness in the little telepath is targeted toward me. Maybe Forrest dressed him down about the broken bones. He certainly hadn't been pleased to hear about them that night, nor the bullet wounds. Instead, our group concentrates on developing each of our powers and identifying inventive ways to make them function collectively. The radicals like to band together like an unbreakable chain, Nevermore says one day, and the scorn he has for these radicals is evident in his tone. At least this we can agree on. If we can't stand together and discover ways to combine our powers, they will overtake us, even with our enhanced powers. Though he speaks to all of us, he scowls at me from the edge of his eyes. Nevermore doesn't like me at all, yet I have no notion why. Hound only speaks to me during training, and his tone is remarkably professional. The tension he bears toward me is unmistakable, yet when we are working as a cohesive unit to use our powers together, he becomes all business, like he was designed for this purpose. I suppose we all were, to some extent. The first couple of days, he only talks to me when necessary for the job, and as we ride up the freight elevator to a unit, he never once even glances my way. When the doors open, he immediately walks out and says goodnight before disappearing into his apartment. The distance doesn't bother me. We have to work together. It ends there. On the second night, Vortex heaves out a dramatic sigh as Hound once again retires into the apartment, accompanied by Nevermore, who glares over his shoulder at me one last time. He despises me, I say. Are you kidding? She says. He's completely enamored with you, but he said you needed space, so he's giving it to you. I'm speechless before realizing we aren't talking about the same person. I mean Nevermore, not Hound. Oh. Vortex bites her lip as if realizing she said too much. She waves a dismissive hand. We pause in front of her door across the hall from me. He hates everyone, something about his past. He doesn't talk about it, though he seems harder on you than on anyone else, I suppose. She shrugs as if it doesn't matter, and to her, it probably doesn't. But to me, it does. Nevermore doesn't like anyone, maybe because he knows what we think of him. He can read our minds, after all. Her words fill me with déjà vu. Have we had this conversation before? That couldn't have anything to do with his attitude, I say, intending it as a joke, though it doesn't quite sound that way. Vortex cocks her head. She's undoubtedly a beautiful girl with a long, narrow face that accentuates her big eyes. So there's nothing between you and Hound anymore? I shake my head, again sensing déjà vu. It just feels wrong. She gnaws her lip again, then draws a deep breath and says, "So, if I, was interested, you wouldn't be mad?" I shake my head. "Go for it." Vortex glances at the door to apartment 6 as if considering doing so at that moment. "Okay, if you don't care." I really don't. She smiles big, then nods and says goodnight before retreating into her apartment 3. It doesn't take Vortex long. The very next day, she flirts endlessly with Hound, and he soaks it all up. Occasionally, I catch him scrutinizing me as if expecting me to blow up in a fit of jealousy. To my amazement, I actually don't care. While I can agree he's a terribly attractive boy, I have no interest in him. Some part of me expected to feel at least a little jealous, what with our history and all. But watching the two of them flirting with each other fills me with relief, even when Nevermore prods at me about it in his always snide manner. After training, we all ride up the elevator, and Hound brushes Vortex on the arm as they exit ahead of us. His gaze once more seeks some reaction from me. I grant him nothing, not as he touches her back, not as he brandishes his winning smile at her, not even as he swings toward her door instead of his own and accompanies her in. "That must sting," Nevermore says blandly, and instead of displaying any level of sympathy that might make him more human, he glares right through me with that obnoxious sneer on his face. Why is Nevermore so bent on causing me pain? What did I ever do to him to make him despise me so much more than anyone else? What I wouldn't give to obliterate that sneer off his face right across a concrete wall. Road rash might even pretty up his ugly beak of a face. This routine continues each night, and each morning Vortex feels the need to assure me that nothing serious happened between her and Hound, as if she's still concerned that I care. I don't, and after 3 days, it annoys me that she constantly needs my endorsement. Before training the next day, I open the fridge to retrieve the same food I eat every morning. I've learned that fueling my body with macronutrients at the start of the day helps diminish the overwhelming hunger from burning up my power. I grab 3 egg and sausage sandwiches from the fridge, along with a carton of milk, leaning down to dig out a vine of grapes, then stand and close the door. Someone waits on the other side, and I kick out instinctively, planting my foot firmly against their chest. Polly yelps and skids across the floor on her back. I recognize my mistake immediately and drop my food on the counter and dash over to help her. "I'm sorry, you startled me," I say, gripping her arm and hauling her to her feet. Her hands are clammy. Polly's face is pale and her eyes are red-rimmed. The appearance of her in this almost ghost-like state is absolutely frightening. Polly smooths out her black tank top over her matching leggings, and I note how severely her hands are shaking. "I didn't mean to scare you," I say. "You didn't," she says promptly, the pitch of her voice raised, gasping for breath. "I mean, you did, but that's not—" She shakes her head as if she can't think of the rest of the words. I attempt steadying her as she sways to the side. It isn't only her hands shaking. Polly's entire body shudders. Her eyes are wide with dread. Once again, she glances toward the door as she hugs herself. "What's wrong, Polly?" "So much. There's just—" A thud in the hallway cuts her off, and her already pale skin turns whiter. She looks ready to keel over. "Polly," I say, seeking to reclaim her attention. She licks her lips, then suddenly jumps toward me, seizing my arms. Her eyes are large and frenzied. "My full call sign is Polygraph." She says this as if it explains her behavior. Polygraph, a lie detector, so she can detect when people lie to her. Her grip tightens. I almost pull away and easily could, but something about her abject terror freezes me. Polly's words tumble out of her mouth so hastily I have a tough time following her. "I'm here to observe you, Bianca. We need to talk. Tonight. They're lying to you. Everyone, don't dose before bed. We will talk then. A knock on the door makes me jump. Polly swiftly releases her grip on me and darts back into her room. Everyone is lying to me? About what? I've never been one for puzzles, preferring everything laid out for me. Polly's cryptic behavior this morning only serves to confound me further. I gawk at Polly's closed door, unsure how to react. At another knock on the door, I jump and edge over to open it. Nevermore waits rather impatiently in the hallway with his arms crossed and his mouth drawn in a thin line. Took you long enough. Let's go. My heart hammers against my ribs as we head to the training facility. Nevermore can read minds. They are lying to you. Everyone. I distract myself from conversation or eye contact with him by scarfing down my breakfast as we go. I sense his eyes examining me. I can't distract my thoughts with food. Does he know what Polly said? She said everyone is lying to me, including Nevermore. But trust is vital to a unit. If I can't trust him, we are all doomed. Nevermore remains utterly silent. He does not indicate that he knows what I can't shake from my mind. We arrive and cross the training facility floor. Hound is leaning against one table with a casual ease that exudes confidence. Vortex stands in front of him closely, so intimately. He peeks over her shoulder at me, and I swear I detect a hint of a smirky play over his lips. We may have our first assignment soon, Nevermore announces, which means we need to double down on training. Hound groans. Vortex heaves out a melodramatic sigh. I simply drift into position to start. Perhaps a decent, vigorous training day will distract me. 9. True to his word, Nevermore runs us through several brutal simulations. We are in an unstable, abandoned building in the eastern borough of Velpis. The boarded-up windows and cracked foundation make me worry how my density will make the building react under my weight as we chase a cluster of radicals. They burst out into the street and drag the building down on our heads as one of them produces a haze that splits the four of us apart. Hound draws us all back together at the same moment Vortex opens a void beneath our feet. We land on the other end of her void, but a chunk of the building followed us, and I raise my arms in time to catch it. The weight crushes me down to a knee. My shoulder dislocates, but I hold on as the others escape to safety. Then I toss the heavy block of concrete aside. Nevermore crouches beside me, snatching my dislocated arm and popping it back into place. I don't scream. I barely even feel this degree of pain anymore. Perhaps that was why he abused me so severely on my second day. Maybe he prepared me for the pain to come. I should thank him. At lunch, I seek Polly's unit, but it's nowhere to be found. The entire unit has disappeared. I scan for them all day, only to be disappointed. Our unit passes through another simulation. This time, the radicals are strong arms, like me, but not as enhanced as I am. I break bones without a second thought, throw bodies through walls where Hound finishes them off. I cannot see what he does from his position inside the building, but the shriek the radicals release is piercing. A group of aggressors surrounds the four of us, while I carry the struggling form of our target over my shoulder. Nevermore clenches his fists and his shoulders tighten. Then the radicals break into chaotic screams of pure horror and they scatter, swatting at nothing. One of them stumbles and his knees buckle as he plunges forward. I step carelessly over the lifeless body, barely sparing more than an offhand glimpse at his young, dark face. That face, somewhat familiar, makes me nearly miss a step as my heart thumps against my ribcage and my pulse quickens in panic. Get a grip on yourself, Bianca, I think. It's a simulation. None of this is real. He isn't real. As the simulation completes and we step back into the training facility, I once more search for Polly. Unit 12 was on the training floor earlier, but they are long gone now. Only we remain. Hound squats, mopping perspiration from his forehead with the hem of his shirt. I need to eat, he declares. I nod in agreement. Nevermore shakes his head, causing his raven black locks to drip sweat. He's always pale, but right now he appears ready to topple. No, we have one more simulation to work through. That's sufficient for tonight, Nevermore, a familiar voice announces. I spin around, stunned to see Forrest watching from a gangway overhead, scrolling through something on his tablet. Hound stands, his back tense. Vortex shrinks away. Nevermore only presents what I expect as his perpetual scowl. The team needs rest, Forrest declares. Tomorrow you have your first assignment. I need everyone in the conference room on the docking bay level at 0600 hours for briefing. Go straight to bed after you eat. He speaks as if we will all obey without question, and judging by the way the group murmurs acceptance of the command, he commands respect. Forrest turns and strides along the gangway toward the elevator on his level. I head in the same direction, hoping to edge him off by calling it first. Really, I want to pursue him, to ask about Polly. But she cautioned me not to trust anyone. Does that extend to Forrest? No, surely not him. He's my brother. He might be the sole person I can trust. I open my mouth to call to him, but nothing comes out. Everyone. Polly's warning screams in my head. The door closes on Forrest. You aren't even sweating, Vortex says as she joins me at the elevator. It isn't fair. I spin, heart jumping into my throat. Another perk of super strength, I suppose. The words slide out, but my mind is elsewhere. Nevermore studies me in a manner that makes my skin crawl. Thankfully, the door opens and we tread into the freight elevator to ride up. Vortex bounces on her toes. So, tomorrow, our first team mission. Hound watches the numbers climb to our floor. Just remember, Nevermore says, the radicals will say and do anything to turn us, and some citizens will defend them. It's dangerous out there. We could die. Quite a ray of sunshine, I mutter. Maybe if I could remember more of the world outside of this facility and the simulations, I might feel better prepared. We step out of the elevator on the apartment level, and what greets us is hardly encouraging. One boy from Unit 14, Polly's unit, sobs against the shoulder of his teammate. Out of 12 agents, myself included, 10 of us are packed into the hallway. The atmosphere is grim, reminiscent of the hazy memory I have of my parents' funeral. My footsteps are heavy as I exit the elevator at the back of our group. My gut churns as I shuffle along beside Vortex. What happened, Levi? Hound asks one boy from Unit 14. Levi, a boy with dark hair cut tight to his skull and thick eyebrows to match the severity of his grief-stricken face, rubs at his teammate's back. We left on a mission today. His voice hitches and he lets out a shuddering breath. We lost half the team. The news turns my stomach to stone and my gaze sweeps the corridor again. Everyone loiters out here except for one boy from Unit 14 whose name I don't know, and Polly. I don't have to ask to identify who is missing. We need to talk, tonight. It can't be a coincidence that Polly died on the same day she came to me frightened, spouting about lies and truth. And if this mission was so dangerous for Unit 14, what will happen to us when we go out tomorrow? I'm not ready for this. Hardly anyone glances my way as the sniffles and sobs rake against my ears, heightened by my paranoia. As I open my door, Hound's hand settles on my arm. Maybe you shouldn't be alone right now, he says. I peer at him, at the worry in his eyes. Beside him, Vortex is nodding. Everyone. I'll be fine. The words are hollow, not my own. No. Nevermore joins them. That's a transparent lie. He's reading my mind. Go away. Nevermore shakes his head. He's right. Why don't you stay with Vortex tonight? Had I not been already observing her from the corner of my eyes, I would have missed that momentary consternation at Nevermore's invitation. Vortex doesn't want me in her apartment, even if she doesn't want me to be alone. The subtle widening of her eyes swiftly passes, and she provides a charitable smile instead. Yeah, I have an extra room right now. I fumble for something to say, anything to get me out of this and be left alone in my apartment. Or I can stay with you, Hound offers, prompting a vexing glare from Vortex. If you prefer. Unable to figure out an excuse out of this, I accept Vortex's offer. Not only do I have no desire to spend the night with Hound, but I also don't want to upset Vortex the night before our first mission. Despite my absence of hunger, Vortex insists I pack my stomach before bed. Going hungry overnight right before a mission will only harm the team. An hour after lying in bed awake, Vortex tiptoes in. Hey, you still awake? She asks as if she doesn't already realize the answer. Yeah. Vortex perches on the edge of the bed and her gaze wanders to the dose still resting on my nightstand. I didn't take it. I can help if you need it, she offers. Don't dose. Polly's warning makes me wonder why she demanded I skip. It isn't as if the dose has improved my sleep like Nevermore said it would, but what exactly does it do? You can't skip, Steele, she says, then rubs at her arm. No, claws at it. It's dangerous skipping doses. Nevermore told you, didn't he? I nod. Skipping could lead to degenerative diseases, to which there is presently no established cure. Is skipping on an impulse of Polly's paranoia worth the risk? Why was Vortex out of the unit when I first reported? What happened to her? I want to ask, but I'm afraid all I will hear are lies. Even if Vortex tells me the truth, I will likely still suspect her of lying. Sure, then I can help with yours, I say. After all, we all have to dose, right? Vortex shakes her head. I took mine just before I came in. Something screams at the back of my head, instructing me to think, to see problems from a unique angle, to think outside the box. The voice is familiar, yet also not. Vortex won't leave until she knows I've taken my dose and I can't run or hide, so I hold out my arm absently. With great care, she retrieves the needle from the nightstand and unstoppers the tip. The blue fluid reflects in the lights. Vortex doesn't meet my gaze as she presses her fingers to my arm to stretch the skin. Is she shaking? The way she administers this dose is not with the practice efficiency of someone who has done this 100 times herself. She bites her lip, takes deliberate aim, and even seems to second-guess just moments before piercing my skin. I should stop her, but before I can speak up, the needle slips in. I hardly feel it at all. Then the blue liquid slides into my veins. The moment it's done, she disposes of the used dose needle and leaves me alone. I glare at the ceiling, speculating about the dose, Vortex's ill-concealed apprehension, and Polly's warning. Everything about this place feels false. Polly's death was no accident.
If you enjoyed this sample, click the links in the description to hear more. Do you want free audiobooks, ebooks, or autographed paperbacks? Join me on Patreon at patreon.com/szdavies_character-assassin. You'll gain access to my Discord server, behind-the-scenes updates, merch, and so much more.